Well, okay, Senatapi. It's Native Wellness Institute's Power Hour on Wellness Wednesday. Woohoo! Just saying hello to everyone out there. It's an incredible summer day. We hope you're with your family. We hope you're on vacation, or if you're getting ready for school, we hope you have all your school clothes. If you're getting ready to go back to college, we see a bright future for you. If you're still at ceremony, I heard there was some Indians up on Chief Mountain. They've been fasting for 3 months and they just turned into a wafer. Just season. You know, when you fast for 3 months, you turn into a wafer. So I just say hello, Oki, Nistu, Nidaniko, Mokoyo Sukoyi. It's my second Blackfoot name. Nistu Amskapi Pikani. I come from the Blackfoot Confederacy, and some of my ancestors come from Kainai and Abutsa Pikani by standoff and Brockett. And then I also have some relatives who come from up around Gleason area. And then I have, our family, we have a t-shirt that says, I'm part white, and I can't prove it. We have also researched our white blood and found out that our relatives came over from Scottish and Irish to Allison Island. And then our grandpa escaped from them because he wanted to go live with the Indians, and he did. He just went and lived with the Indians and had a whole bunch of babies anyway. So I just doing some introduction. I am part of a large team with Native Wellness Institute. And we started 2 years and 5 months ago with the Power Hour. And it was something in reaction to the pandemic. And it was our way of giving back to the community because it is free and it is on YouTube, and all the past power hours that are positive, productive, and proactive. And now that we have become endemic as opposed to epidemic, which is a word, is that the COVID-19 has reached a stage where it's moving towards what would be considered herd immunity, at least in the United States, and then hopefully worldwide. So since it's endemic, you see that we're now just asking to use precautions, still use a mask around those who might be compromised, and until we know more about monkeypox, and I think we're going to do just a power on monkeypox soon, that just be careful. But it's interesting because when you protect yourself, I'm sitting in a beautiful Kootenai home on what they call Flathead Lake. It's a body of water that is actually connected to where I live because of the underground aquifer and the underground waters. So I'm sitting in a place, it just makes me about my friend Rosemary Kai, Rosemary, her and I always take care of each other. And that's a good way to begin. We're allies, we're sister allies. And the topic that I wanted to start the dialogue on is about LGBTQ and Two-Spirit. So lesbian, gay, transgender, trans, Two-Spirit. And in some of our tribes, they were called holy people. In my area, which we've got 11 nations, and then the 6 Confederacy, those that are blessed with having what we're calling queer, non-binary, transgender, or multi-sex, or we have all of these terms coming in. So it's good just to, find out, number one, ask a person what their identity is. And when you ask someone, that's going to be the allyship. So I wanted to begin by, and I always think of Jolene Joseph, our executive director. Jolene always likes to read the definition of ally. So I wanted to talk about allyship before we talk about the healing. And in allyship, and this is, we may think we're an ally, but we're going to become a better ally. And it has to do with radical empathy versus sympathy. So the definition of an ally is an ally, one that is associated with another as a helper, a person or a group that provides assistance and support in an ongoing effort, activity, or struggle. That's the Merriam-Webster's definitions of an ally. And in this day and age with institutional racism, in this day and age of injustice for women's health with fighting Roe versus Wade appeal, in this day and age where we have people of color overrepresented in every prison in the United States, this day and age where there's injustice about what people are paid in wages, this day and age where there's inequity in housing and who can rent what or who can buy what, and this day and age when we still in the United States of America, and since this is about natives, and most reservations over the 500 nations that we have, on most reservations, there's a level of injustice because of poverty, of just plain simple poverty. And we're not here to solve poverty. We just want you to understand that to be an ally, you have to have some empathy for these kinds of injustices, because a lot of the beginning, we might have sympathy, and I think about, sometimes it's always, it's good to like just narrow it down to a story. We have sympathy when someone like during this pandemic has a death, or someone has losses of a career, someone has a great loss within themselves, because some of us may have lost our jobs, some of us may have lost our purpose, some of us may have lost a child, some of us, we may have lost our taste and smell when we had COVID. And so when that happens, and you can see it on, social media, or all of the Hallmark cards are made saying, I give you my condolences. I have sympathy. We have get well cards. And what I'm asking you to do is to go beyond that, because sometimes those kind of gestures are good, but they're hollow. They're spiritually hollow, and we need to take it a little bit further and become an ally with radical empathy. And so radical empathy, wow, so let's get it down to metaphorically. It's when you say to someone who just broke their leg or broke their ankle, and you say to them, oh, I'm so sad for you, I'm sorry that you broke your leg, I really, I really can feel you, I'm sorry. That's one way of humanness, of being compassionate. But to have empathy is that you remember when you broke your leg, you remember when you broke your ankle, and you can empathize with that person. And by saying it, you can say, I remember when I broke my leg and I had to humble myself to wear a cast to have a cane, to be in a wheelchair. When I had those feelings, I got scared. When I had those feelings, I felt alone. When I broke my leg, I couldn't work. So I had to go through, that's empathy. That's radical empathy when you can say what you went through. And then, it's a dialogue. You turn to that person and you say to that person, how does it feel since you broke your leg? And you pause and you listen. And you listen, not looking at your phone, not any kind of other interruptions, eye to eye, and you listen. And you listen to what that person has to say. So I'm going to start there because we're beginning the dialogue on being an ally to LGBTQ and to spirit. And it doesn't mean that you yourself have to be LGBTQ to spirit. It means that you have to educate yourself, that you have to be encouraging, that you have to take action, and that there's it's almost like a spiritual balancer of empathy, And so I wanted to kind of start there. And I know, I was just thinking, geez, those are big words. I mean, they are like radical empathy. Geez. Anyway, we need it. So I'll start with just the here and now. I have so much good emotion. I am when I get off this power hour, I'm going to the 26th annual Two Spirit Camp Out and Gathering. So for 26 years in Montana, and my hat's off to Steve Barrios, to Dave, to Raven Heavy Runner, to Jill LaPointe, to gosh, I could go, there's too many names to name. For 26 years, they've been gathering and healing and celebrating their two-spiritness. And I guess it just makes me want to, my heart is just so full. It just makes me want to cry with them. And it makes me want to cry for them, because I know most of you know some of my history. And a big chapter of my history is I adopted a young person. And some of you know who she is. And I didn't get to, she always she was always used to say, Mom, you always talk about me. And I told her, okay, I won't do that anymore. But for this moment, I want to share this for the intention and the purpose of how I became a better ally. When I adopted Matumspi, and that's her Blackfoot name, or Astapopsy, Buster Yellow Kidney gave her that name when she was sundancing, because they both had the same dream the night before he was supposed to name her. And he was kind of ill, so that we're talking 1999, and he left us in 2000. So she had the same dream, and he had the same dream. And I think like Johnny Dayrider and all the Southsiders on the Scotty Blackfeet Reservation were there. And they named her that because she was at that time in 1999, one of the very young people, young, because, we had there was some teenagers who were coming back to Sundance and sundancing with Buster Yellow Kidney. And so in his dream and her dream, he named her the center pole, like the center pole at the dance. And so I want to say that much because she has three other names. She has her Crow names, and she has her Northern Cheyenne name, and then she has two Blackfoot names, one given by the Fish family and one given by Buster Yellow Kidney. So she has four names, which is, you know, indicative that no matter which tribe she is and no matter where she is, that the holy people see something in her. And I just want to say that, you know, when I adopted her when she was 14, we'll kind of, you know, capsulize the story, because I had come into, before I was her adopted mother, I had come from living 30 years in California and getting my basic career going in California, working with the 86 rancherias and working with fetal alcohol syndrome prevention and working with drug addicts and working with pregnant addicts. And so when I came into all of those workplaces, I became an ally. I worked with Gerald Harmon in 1981. I started working, I knew the Harmon brothers. There was 4 or 5 Harmon brothers, and they were all two-spirited. And Gerald was my first inroad to becoming this ally, to having radical empathy. Gerald was at the, 1980, 1979, they were not even calling it AIDS. They weren't even calling it HIV positive, that we had none of those terms. There was still a brutal lateral oppression to anyone, to especially to men in the San Francisco Bay Area when they contracted AIDS. So Gerald was one of the first persons that I loved deeply. As a colleague, we shared office, we wrote grants together, we suffered together because we were in this little office, and my friend slowly got sick, and they didn't know what it was. And he had contracted AIDS, and it wasn't long, and he perished. He died very quickly. And no one would say why he died. No one would give up that information, because realize in allyship, you have to learn the history. So 1980 or 81, and that's like, 41 years ago. We were just at a place where the empathy was beginning. And I'm sharing that because that was when Gerald died, and I loved him, and I went to his funeral. I know why he died, and I know that, how he was trying to go with the healing. He was trying to get therapy. He was trying to choose an option. And when I want to say, when creator creator God has given you the blessings of being LGBTQ, transgender, queer, non-binary, when you've got those blessings, it's not something you can change. It's not something that can be brainwashed out of you. It's not, no matter, what church they take you into, no matter what they do to you, it's just who you are. It's like, if you think about it, it's crazy how we think, because, I look at cases where, when we have two young people, say like 2 10-year-olds, and I had some nephews like this. One was raised in a family where they just let him freely express himself. I remember his sheet said, chicks rule, and they were both born male, and he was just allowed to color his hair. He was allowed to be creative. And then I remember the other that was in a family that was Catholic, and that believed, young males have to be raised as young males and be in sports and be aggressive and have little girlfriends. And I just think about that. So it didn't work on either of them. They're both two-spirited now, and they both have beautiful lives. But there was that painful part where families and community and even girlfriends that like them tried to change them, but they couldn't change them. So that's I'm just telling you the truth in my story of becoming an ally. Now with my adopted daughter, when I first got her, she was very assertive. She could team rope, she could dig ditches, she could take apart things, put it together. I mean, and this seemed normal to me because I was raised as an oldest child to my father, my father was a mini Poka, the youngest baby, born in 1937, and I was his first child. And so in our tribe, and a lot of tribes, they like a boy to be the first born. And so I had to wait for, like I said, my Kathy, Wanda, and Lori before the prize boy came. But in between, I was raised by uncles and raised by my father to do boy things, hunt, shoot guns, play marbles, kill frogs, that kind of stuff. The good stuff. I still love some of that stuff. But I look at so when I adopted and becoming an ally to my daughter, I just thought that's normal. She can so then I would, say, do you know how to change a tire? No. So, okay, you got to learn how to change a tire. Do you know how, do you know how to, do you know how to shoot a gun? No, I don't know how. So, you need to learn this. And I just saw it as, having a good life, but I realized, so and right now, and I talk to her every Sunday. And I'll have to ask her what she likes to be called, because she likes to be called by her Indian name or what her pronouns are. But I remember her saying to me, and she's like 17, 18 years old, and she'd say, Mom, I don't know if I like boys or girls, because she had tried to have a couple of boyfriends and it just wasn't feeling right. And she said, Mom, I don't know if I like boys or girls. And this is my ally answer was, I told her, I said, that's okay. You don't have to know right now. But one day you're going to meet someone. And when you meet that person, boom, you're just going to know who you are, because you're going to love that person because of who you are. And so then we allowed it to be like that. But she did not officially come out till much later on, although everyone, and I want to say in my tribe, she would get slurs. I remember one, I think he's kind of a holy person now. He used to always laterally oppress her and say things to her like, you're supposed to be wearing a dress. Like, okay. I think about that now. That's rude, telling someone else they should be wearing a dress, because she liked, that was, one of the indicators. She only liked to wear pants. She was 8th grade queen in Northern Cheyenne, and they made her wear a dress, and she didn't want to wear a dress. She wanted to wear, anyway, they made her wear heels and a dress, and she kicked off the heels. I mean, I just think about that, because I never, from that moment, I never tried to force her to wear a dress, except when she was sundancing. Because when she was sundancing, in the protocols of, there was a woman's side and a man's side, and all of the women, we sewed her dresses. And then I think Lila Gunn from Williams Lake up in British Columbia, man, she sewed her some really beautiful dresses. And so that was a time, it's interesting, while she was in ceremony, when she was not drinking or eating for 4 days, she had no complaints about wearing a dress, because she was in a holy spiritual place. So I'm sharing this because it's how I eventually became an ally, and I'm here with you today, August 17th, 2022. And I'm about to leave here and go into a camp. And this is how I'm going to practice more at being an ally at the 26th annual Two-Spirit Campout. Is I need to find out more information. I need to hear more stories. And the part of me that's crying is because I've been working with so many adults. And just last week, I was around youth who were too scared to come out and say what their pronouns were. They were too scared. And it took about 3 days of trust building. It took that long to trust build with the adults and the young people for them to come out and claim their two-spiritness. And I'm just going to use two-spirit because that was the term that they chose to grab onto. And I could see the pain, because when they did publicly in our group come out, they held hands. And so it was an allyship of each other, so that none of them were standing alone. And then our group around them had to take time to say, God, I've known them all this time and I like them. They're my friend. And now they're telling me something. So I love them. And that's where that empathy, it's not just sympathy, it's radical empathy. The group around these youth, they hugged them, and hugged them and talked to them and ate with them and said to them, I like you just the way you are. And I'm really glad I know this, because I still love you. I love you more. And that was a massive healing for us in that particular arena. So I welcome you to Native Wellness Institute's Power Hour. And sometimes I try to use notes, and sometimes I just use my instinct, because I don't know, when you, I'm 66. I say to my friends, my A1C is 6, I'm 66, so I'm 666. And so that's powerful for me. It's not the other 666.
I don't see a friend in your contacts.
Oh.
What is your friend's first and last name?
That's funny, my Siri. Okay, girlfriend, you be quiet for a little while. Sometimes I forget the phone is on and just say, what question did you ask? I should have asked Siri. Yeah. What's radical empathy? No. Anyway, there's when I was preparing and praying over these, I guess, years and days, but when I was coming to you today, I want to congratulate my team, because I kept saying, we've got to do something on the Power Hour more than what Asa Wright has done for us, more than what other guests that we've had. We have to talk about it contemporary in so many ways. And I say, because we have to start to do the healing. And in all of the communities, when we go there, when Native Wellness Institute goes there, or I go with, Native Dads Network, or I go with White Bison, or go with Al Pooley's group, because we're all banding together. We're allies. When we go there and they speak about a young person who took their life, and sometimes they'll say, well, how old were they? And they'll go, well, they were 15, or what grade were they in? Oh, well, they were in the 9th grade. Or they'll say this right away, the antennas, and this is where the allyship, the antennas, when a young person that young commits suicide, a good guess is because they've been abandoned, they've been rejected, they've been bullied, and they've been ostracized. And most times it can be because of their sexual orientation, are because they gave some kind of indication that they were two-spirited. And so if you want to stop that, if you want that not to happen anymore, we have to start with this dialogue about becoming a better ally, and not just with sympathy, but radical empathy. And I don't mean to, or I guess I do. I'm talking firmly and I'm talking boldly because I'm asking you to be an ally. And this isn't something you watch. I can remember when my daughter was one, she may have been, it might have been another couple in East Glacier, but when we had the same-sex marriage, and that was an allyship as a parent, so I'll talk as a parent. I had to protect my daughter because she chose, the woman that she chose was not only not Indian, but the woman that she chose was just this beautiful, intelligent, two-spirited woman. And when they I guess were courting, and they had, said, we want to get married. So my allyship became that radical empathy became with talking to who would help in the Ganaxtimidas. And even in our Ganaxtimidas, bless my brothers and my sisters, they had to have their little working it out, and they chose to perform the ceremony. And then I'm talking to my veteran relatives, and at that time my Uncle Gerald Cooper was alive, and I remember Uncle Gerald just standing as a combat vet, standing up for this two women getting married, like he was a badass. Well, they're all bad at, when you're an ally, you're a badass. You are a badass. And that's what we're asking you to be, as a badass with this radical empathy. I just remember Uncle being there, and we led them in on two horses. And I remember the Edwards, Earl Operson's grandchildren, just being her ally, and got a couple of their horses. And I remember Uncle leading in the horses with them horseback. And I was just looking at him, I was saying, dang, he is a badass soldier, because it was like in his warriorship, because he was an ally, and these two women had chosen to get married, and he led them in, and there was many other, our elders. It was a two-spirit wedding, and I think that was, all of our allies came to that wedding, and plus it was no alcohol. So it's like more radical in more ways than one. There was no alcohol, so there was no, like social drinkers think, ooh, I can get drunk at the wedding. Active alcoholics, yeah, I'll get drunk till 6 a.m, whatever. But it was sparkling water, and there was no alcohol served, no drugs or alcohol allowed at this wedding. So I'm going to kind of pause there, because there's and we may have a part 2 to this. And what does it mean, to be an ally? And I there's some things that I wanted to cover. When you're an ally, you really have to look at historically what has been in your nation or in your area the history of two-spirited people. And so one of the Native Wellness Institute, when we do the healthy relationship curriculum, we have a PowerPoint, which would be, more than happy to share with you. You can put in the comments, put your name or send us a message. We can send it to you. But we did research and looking into tribes with what was their in their tribal language, their term for a two-spirited person. And it was amazing. Navajos, Zuni, Pueblos, Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, a lot of California tribes, they had a word. So that in itself tells you it wasn't something that just came about. It tells you that in an ancient language, for centuries old, that there was a term that described these holy people. And I'm just going to say, because holy people, because they, when you have two spirits, sometimes your holiness is so vibrant that we would call it flamboyant. It is so flamboyant that it just, you can feel the energy of not only, when I say they have the potential to become healers, doctors, artists, singers, dancers. It's just that they're so holy that they can become all of these things. And so some of those interpretation, I think about it like, we had this in that PowerPoint, there's these two 90-year-old Lakota women, is there was always in the language a term, and probably if you the movies, people will say, oh, wink day, oh yeah, birdash. But there was all these words that they described a woman with a manly heart, a man with a woman heart, or a two spirit, a feminine. There was femininity about it, because a lot of Indian languages are just that. So historically, when you become an ally, you really need to look at some of how LGBTQ two spirit laws, acceptance, protocols, rules, and you have to bring it down to a human level where you learn more and you don't judge. And so I was coming, as I was coming, and thank you, Rosemary. This is just a safe space, and thank you for smudging me, because I was thinking it has to start like even when we go to baby showers. We've been conditioned by the Europeans when they came over that if you go to a baby shower, then if it's a boy, you should buy everything blue. And if it's a girl, you should buy everything pink. And so what we're asked as an ally is, when you go to a baby shower, give something that's non-binary till you let that child show you who they are, and you don't try to already fit them in this blue box or this pink box. You allow them to tell you who they are. And I love it. I love it when I meet parents and their 3-year-old or their 4-year-old comes into the room, and they say to them, I'm raising them non-binary till they tell me, okay, baby, what you need? Oh, I got this. There's a beautiful little puppy here, and I'm not gonna. He's trying to let they make me let him outside, but no, I'm the guest. I don't let puppies outside. So this so when you go to baby showers, let's just start there. Be an ally. Think of what you could bring to that new baby. It might be cradle board, because I was thinking cradle boards are non-binary. We put little boys in there and we put little girls in there, and we allow them, we also breastfeed them, we also speak the language to them. We also sing the songs to them. We also take their placenta and bury it where they're going to live. Your placenta, all of that's very important. Your umbilical cord is sometimes beaded and it's put on their dance outfits. But this being an ally, it starts there. It really starts with how you contribute to raising children to become who they need to become until they let you know. So I wanted to say that much, and I want to just I have good memories, and then I have current memories about LGBTQ. So I'm going to talk about some of the hurt for a few minutes here, and then I'm going to talk about some of the healing, because it's hurt people that hurt people. And some of the hurt that I see, most recently in my two-spirited friends that I'm allied to ship is that they end their life. And I just in finding out, one of my friends that, well, I knew him when he was in college, the tribal college. I knew him when he lived in Alaska. I knew him in ceremony because we would always sit by each other and get painted. And then I lost track of him when he moved to Missoula. And it's not just this person, but one of the alternatives that happens with their pain is they try to numb their pain. And the numbing of pain is usually with drugs and alcohol. And once that happens, so you can be an ally because you can intervene. You can intervene in drugs and alcohol. It just keeps showing up. I mean, I think about the interventions. I just say, hey, want to come to a meeting with me? And I take them to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, or I take them to an NA meeting, or I take them to an Alateen meeting. But I just recently, just finding out about some of my two-spirit friends, it just saddens me. They were so young, and I just think about, like Simone. I think about those that find the freedom and go out and, change whatever, if they have a name that is a male name and they change it to a female name. I think that's so empowering because to be an ally is you help queer identity. You help and you encourage it and you lift it up, and it's and you celebrate it. You really celebrate it, and so that's some of the allyship. One of the other things that I wanted to speak about during this time is just some stories where, and I guess I'll move towards. I had the privilege last month and it was like a God thing. I say it's a God thing, that I got to marry two women. And when it didn't start out that way, it was just I was going to go and be part of a ceremony in Yosemite, and then the place where word got washed away. So that's kind of a sign it's not a good to go to that part of Yosemite. So it had to be shifted. So the whole ceremony, and so they still wanted to get married on this July 14th, and so they were looking for what would be good for their hearts, what would be good for their vow, and it transpired for them to come up to a place, and I'm inviting all of you to come to Running Eagle. Running Eagle, Pita Maka was a woman that was a woman with a manly heart around in 1848. And there's a Running Eagle is in back into Two Medicine, and you walk in, it's not very far. There's these beautiful waterfalls. And she got her power by fasting in the cave behind the waterfalls. And she was a great warrior. It started out, and maybe I'll tell that story and then tell about how we got this two spirit marriage together. Pita Maka was about 15 years old, and she had 4 younger brothers and sisters, and their parents had died from smallpox, so they were left orphans. And at 15 years old, usually at that time in a tribe, the relatives would all raise the children together. And but Pita Maka, and she had a different name. That was her second name. And so Pita Maka told them, no, we're going to live as a family. I know how to hunt. And so the boys are going to hunt. The girls are going to take care of the lodge. They're going to tan the hides. They're going to cook, and we're going to all operate as a family. And they did, with her as head of household. And as she grew, she wanted to, go to war, go steal horses, and the men wouldn't let her. And she and I'm trying to like collapse these stories, which I will, because these are long stories. So Pita Maka, she saw the men getting ready to go, and she dressed like a man and she snuck with them. I like that. And so it was about halfway, they're getting halfway to where they were going to steal some horses. And they found out she was with them. And the men, they said, no, you have to go back. You can't be with us. But there was one of their holy people. And he looked at her and he said, no, and back then our holy people, and even today our holy people, are really who's in charge, are really who hereditary chiefs. So he said, I think she's going to bring us good luck. I just have a really positive feeling about this. So we should let her stay. So they allowed her to stay. And so when they came to where they were going to steal some horses, Pita Maka said, let me go in first and prove myself. So they let her go in first. She was quiet. She got in and she cut the reins, they're tied. She brought out, and then I think, sometimes it was 8 or 9 horses she brought back in the quietness. And then she instructed them how she snuck in. So the other men snuck into the camp. They snuck in and they got more horses. And when they came out, they had enough horses. And so they went back home. And that was when she got back home. They had given her the second Blackfoot name because she had gotten in there talking dry mouth. Drink some tea. She had gotten in there with no bloodshed, and they had walked away with taking the horses. And so that's where she began her acceptance. And she never married. She was beautiful, and she was known to even wear her kami poismanix, her stand-up headdress, horseback in battle. And so this marriage, this is a current allyship. Is so when they chose, they were looking at places like Two Medicine, they were looking, Chief Mountain. They hadn't been up in our area. So I'm inviting you all to come and visit us, and you can learn the area. And this is when they asked me, they said, would you help us? Would you do the prayers? And then it became more, would you perform the wedding? And I just, without any hesitation, said yes, 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 yes. Even though in my mind, I thought, I've never done this before. I've been to them. So what transpired, and it's just a beautiful thing, is I called, I asked for help. And I'll say the names because they're just beautiful people. I called my brother Ganaxtamat, Leon Rattler. And I said, Leon, can you come over? I'm helping these 2 women get married. Can you help? And no hesitation, he said, I'll be there. I said, well, it's 7:30 in the morning. When you tell someone it's 7:30 in the morning. So anyway, he said, I'll be there. So then I called Steve Barrios, you'll see him in a minute at the 26th annual Two Spirit gathering. And I called him and I go, Steve, can you come? Because I want you to witness something historical, because, after this Roe versus Wade, the next thing they're going to try to attack is same-sex marriage. And so we've just got to be an ally, and it's fight and take the action. So I want you to witness. And then I started inviting, they invited their parents, and then I started inviting allies in Alcoholics Anonymous, because I know they're clean and sober, because you can trust clean and sober people. The so-called social drinkers, sometimes it's not so trustworthy. So we all came, and it was just so beautiful because it ended up being at Running Eagle, and then it ended up being at Two Medicine, and we were all standing in a circle. And so we're all standing in a circle, and the marriage was kind of like Gona style, like Gathering of Native American style, where every person got to say encouraging words to them and how they seen their love, how they had witnessed them. And one of them's just a bright attorney, and one is she's just a badass activist. She's part of the equity and the equality in this area. And and so we all stood around, and then they have two children. So the two children had to also be in the wedding. So it was like four getting married. And it was just beautiful. It was like, so then they said the words, and then we asked them to say each other a vow to each other about their love and about their commitment and how they were going to treat each other. And after they said why they loved each other. And so it was like a circle, and then bless Leon, he lit the smudge. We all smudged. Bless Leon, he said the prayer. Then we had some of her family say prayers, and then they were married. And it took a couple hours, but that's what happened, is that they became married. And then what they decided to do, and this is the part that I love, they decided to jump in the water. It was such a beautiful wedding, because then they jumped in the water, and then they cleansed off, and then some of us jumped in the water. It was just the blessings of the water just giving in of that two-spirit marriage. And so that's a story of being an ally. One of the resources, and I'm going to put it on Native Wellness Institute's Facebook page, as Wendy Siebold, that was married to my daughter, is still doing a lot of advocacy. And one of the books that is prominent in becoming an ally, we will put it on the Native Wellness Institute Facebook page, and how to get hold of this is because it's something that we can't, it's like me showing you the Bible and all of a sudden you're gonna be a Christian. I mean, I'm showing you a Bible on how to be an ally, and I'm telling you, and I'm planting the seeds of how to be an ally, and how not to be homophobic, and how not to have hatred, and how not to abandon, and how not to reject our LGBTQ2 spirit. And that's why we're coming to you today on the Power Hour. And you can see my emotion around it, because we're saving lives. We are saving lives, and we're not only saving them, we're also nurturing those lives so that they can have a flamboyant future, so that they can have love, that they can have children, that they can have homes, and that they can be paid just in equity, and not fired from a job because of homophobic and racist injustice in those institutions. And I say that now because I cried a lot, driving over here, because I was scared. I wanted Creator I said, please just let me say the stories, let me say something so that you could have empathy, radical empathy. And we could begin to turn it into healing, and not the lateral oppression, not the hatred, that we can turn it into celebrating. So, and I was, I'm also part of the Red Nation film industry with Janelle Romero and the board there. And we're right, I guess I'll end with, we're right in the middle of the Academy Awards has given an apology, and that's allyship, an apology to Shasheen Littlefeather for the way she was treated in 1973 and on up, because she stood up in her buckskin, majestic, and who she was. And she didn't accept the Academy statuette that was to be given to Marlon Brando. And she refused it because of the treatment of Native Americans in film. And you think how that's almost 50 years ago, but that is so radical. So they've apologized with some action, and that kudos to the Academy Awards, because on September 17th, they're going to have a public apology to Shashi. And it's with some of her best allies, the directors of Res Dogs, Dark Winds, all of the Indian series and films are invited and are present. And then there's going to be, instead of speeches, some singers. I know Kalina's going to be there. I know that Ballinger is going to be there, and they're going to apologize to her. And I say that story because that's another example of being an ally to a Native woman. And I'll say this is, in speaking with Shasheen, which I do often, when she first got the apology letter, she cried 2 or 3 times while she was reading it to me. And she kept, this is the word she kept saying. She said, I can't believe that I'm alive, and today that I'm alive to hear and to get this apology. And then she would read some more. And it was so that is happening in our world. So it's time to be an ally. It's time to take it to the next level. And Native Wellness Institute, we're here to uplift, to be positive, productive, and proactive. And so that's why I decided to come on today on Wellness Wednesday and share this with you, so that you and your family could begin to look at how you can be an ally to any of our current or our brand new born LGBTQ and Two-Spirit. So with that, I'll say all of the other power hours are on YouTube. Just type in Native Wellness Institute. Native Wellness is also, we're having our first in-person conference next month, and it's already sold out. We can't, no one allowed unless you sneak in on a boat and you're all just in black, and you come in and you could hear what's going on in the talking circle. Anyway, we're Native Wellness Institute. Our mission is to keep the teachings of our ancestors alive. And so that's why I came to you today, just to begin the dialogue with healing around LGBTQ and Two-Spirit. And so with that, thank you, Shannon Kissinger. Thank you, NWI team. And I'm going to head out to the 26th annual Two-Spirit gathering. So Kitakito Matsuno, thank you very much. I love you all.